low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Susan, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the April 19th, 2026 issue of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. First, I'd like to read about Artemis. Artemis 2 moonshot does for this era what Apollo 8 did back in 1968. This article was written by Christopher Kukunis of the Los Angeles Times. Millions in the streets, an unpopular war, violence, and in the middle of all that, a moonshot. The parallels between today and 1968 are eerie. Nearly 60 years ago, civil rights marches and anti-Vietnam War rallies burst across the country. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated. Police beat protesters outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. A congressional committee stated that the mental picture that many foreigners have of our nation is increasingly that of a violent, lawless, overbearing, even sick society. And at year's end, fearing that the rival Soviet Union would launch a cosmonaut to the moon, the U.S. sent its first crew there. The daring Apollo 8 mission was only the second time humans had flown the spacecraft and the first time they had journeyed to another object in our solar system. Orbiting the moon on Christmas Eve, the astronauts read from the opening of Genesis on live television. One woman wrote NASA that the mission had saved 1968. That message was underscored by the iconic color Earthrise photo. A poet, Archibald MacLeish, also wrote a front-page New York Times essay saying we are all brothers who know now they are truly brothers. Today, so-called No Kings protests draws huge crowds to oppose President Trump, standing up against masked federal agents, abducting people, the illegal surprise attack on Iran, corruption and inflation. Americans have been killed by ICE in full view of cameras, and twice in the last 2 years, would-be assassins have gone after Trump himself. And then came our era's moonshot, Artemis 2, whose 4 astronauts have returned safely to Earth after a lunar flyby, the first time humans have been in the vicinity of the moon since 1972. And this month, Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Cook, and Canadian mission specialist Jeremy Hansen traveled 252,756 miles from Earth, the furthest any human has ever been. A cynic might say, given the state of Earth, perhaps they should have stayed up there, but astronauts are anything but cynical. A nearly flawless test mission of the Orion capsule, well, there were toilet problems, unfolded from a literally brilliant launch to the stately splashdown. And this month, more than 600,000 people watched the NASA YouTube channel as the crew saw the moon as it truly is, a sublime, wild, awesome place, as Cook put it, not just a poster in the sky. She offered metaphor after metaphor, bringing the moon into focus, noting that bright, small craters dotted the surface like a lampshade with tiny pinpricks, holes, and the light shining through. Wiseman compared huge gorges to how water looks draining off a Grand Canyon cliff, and Glover saw darkness so intense he imagined falling through to the middle of the moon. More domestically, Hansen saw a brownish area and compared it to a piece of pie. This is not breathlessness or virality. As Cook said, the moon is a real place. We need to know it as such and as a human symbol while we aim for future flights. Compare this eloquent, science-based, and culturally respectful enthusiasm to Apollo 8's negative reactions. The moon was not, in the words of Commander Frank Borman, a very inviting place to live or work. And the astronauts who just came back from there would disagree, though their love of Earth shone through too. I was also moved by the kinship of the Artemis II flyers. I've never seen astronauts smile and laugh as much as this crew did. I've never seen astronauts cry in space. When Hansen proposed naming a crater Carol after Weissman's late wife, he choked up, and so did I. All four hugged and wiped tears from their eyes. This may have been Artemis II's Apollo 8's moment. In 1968, the crew read an origin story from an ancient text. In 2026, the crew used the name of a loved one to mark the moon. Both gestures captured human hearts. "We love you from the moon," Glover said, and Cook added, "We will always choose each other." Artemis II sets the stage for a new era of lunar exploration, science, and possible commerce. With the discovery of water ice at the lunar poles, humans can tap that material to understand the history of our solar system and development of conditions that lead to life, like us, and project that understanding to exoplanets around other stars. Back on Earth, the chaos of the anti-science Trump administration led to the release, during Artemis, of a proposed nearly 50% cut to NASA science. A similar cut was defeated last year and will again galvanize strong opposition. We are these days quite present with doom, and there is so much to be done, to be set against, and to work for. We need to embrace the wonder and care embodied in Artemis II, remembering what backup astronaut Jenny Gibbons said of her own work. She didn't fly, but was still on a shared mission, and so are we. We're all crewmates on a shared mission. Christopher Kokonas is the author of Still as Bright, an illuminating history of the moon from antiquity to tomorrow. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Next, I would like to read about Earth Day. Earth Day was never meant to be a celebration. On April 22nd, 1970, 20 million Americans, about 10% of the entire U.S. population, took to the streets, campuses, and town squares in a single day to demand action after 150 years of uncontrolled industrial pollution. The demonstrations were so large and bipartisan that Washington responded almost immediately, probably out of fear, but also respect for the intensity and size of the demonstrations. Within just a few years, President Richard Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, and Congress passed 20 landmark laws, including the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and Endangered Species Act. Americans and their environment enjoyed that nonpartisan honeymoon for more than a decade. Years later, cooperation between Democrats and Republicans produced significant environmental progress, including the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, which addressed acid rain, smog, and toxics, and the Pollution Prevention Act of 1990, which stopped pollutants at their source. Were they costly? Initially, to the polluters, yes, but the health and safety results, estimated to be close to $2 trillion in health cost savings, have been stunning, and eventually industry investments in clean technologies led to efficiency, profits, and innovations. These laws and others demonstrated that bipartisan cooperation could deliver both environmental and economic results. What is often forgotten today is how broad that political coalition once was. Environmental protection was not a partisan cause. Republicans and Democrats almost competed to be seen as environmental champions. Conservative lawmakers voted for pollution limits, and no wonder. 75% of Americans supported increased government spending to reduce air and water pollution, and large majorities said they were willing to pay higher costs for clean air and water. For a time, that public pressure worked, but the momentum the first Earth Day created has slowed and increasingly reversed. Why? One major turning point came in 2010, when the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United allowed corporations and outside groups to spend unlimited money in elections. And in the years since, political spending by all groups has surged, but practically by polluting industries, which outspent health and environmental groups 20-1. According to Climate Power, the fossil fuel industry spent $450 million during the 2024 election cycle. And in the past year, 425 environmental and health and safety laws and regulations have been rolled back or hobbled, many of which, including all climate change-related policies and laws, were promised during the election. The quid pro quo for donations was pretty straightforward. Denial that climate change exists or is harmful. Citizens United opened the spigot for anti-environmental spending, and what is coming out of those spigots is hurting our children, our health, and American innovations and economic leadership. The influence of that spending has helped transform environmental policy from a bipartisan priority to one of the most polarized issues in Washington. In the years after Citizens United, cooperation largely collapsed. The result has been legislative gridlock at precisely the moment scientists and many economists say immediate action will both reduce or even solve the climate crisis and keep America from losing its place in the impossible to stop green economy. Ironically, this reversal of environmental policy has occurred even as public concern has remained high. Surveys consistently show that large majorities of Americans believe climate change is real, and more than 70% of Americans support stronger measures to address climate change. This disconnect between public concern and political action is the defining challenge of this Earth Day and the environmental movement itself. That is why the theme of this year's Earth Day, Our Power, Our Planet, is more than a slogan. It is a reminder of a fundamental truth that shaped the first Earth Day. Political power and ultimately flows from citizens, real people, to Congress and the White House. The environmental breakthroughs of the 1970s and 1990s did not happen because leaders suddenly discovered science. They happened because millions of people made environmental protection politically unavoidable. Citizens marched, organized, voted, and demanded action. They made it clear that protecting the planet was not optional. Today, that same civic power and engagement is needed again. If governments believe environmental protection is a low priority for voters, progress will stall. But when citizens demonstrate that protecting the planet matters to their communities, their votes, and their future, leaders respond. That is the real meaning of Our Power, Our Planet. The environmental movement has already shown what collective action can achieve. The question now is whether we are prepared to use that power again. Because the progress of the past half-century was never guaranteed. Without sustained public engagement, it could easily erode. Earth Day was never meant to be a celebration. It was designed as a demonstration of public will. More than 50 years later, the challenge is the same: to show governments once again that the power to protect our planet ultimately belongs to the people. Kathleen Rogers is president of EarthDay.org, the world's largest recruiter to the environmental movement. Next, we have this Arbor Day. Let's move past the myths and rethink forests. April 24th is Arbor Day, when Americans will gather to plant trees on city streets, in parks, and within other open spaces. But this year, as wildfires, drought, and flooding threaten communities from California to the Carolinas, we need to think bigger than individual saplings. Arbor Day was founded in 1872 to green the once treeless Great Plains. Planting trees made sense then, but 154 years later, our challenge isn't a lack of trees, it is a lack of understanding about what healthy, functioning forests actually deliver. When properly managed and conserved, forests can produce timber sustainably, support wildlife, reduce wildfire risk, feed watersheds, and strengthen rural communities. But current policy often treats these as competing goals when they're not. Several stubborn myths keep us from effective forest conservation. Science has debunked them, but policy hasn't caught up. Myth. Myth. Conservation kills timber jobs. Working forest conservation easements prove forests can produce timber while delivering conservation outcomes. These permanent and legal agreements keep forests in private hands and on local tax rolls while ensuring sustainable management. The Van Eck forests in Northern California and Oregon harvest between 1 million and 2 million board feet annually while quadrupling carbon storage and providing habitat for more than 250 species. From Texas to Tennessee, landowners are discovering properly structured easements deliver both economic returns and conservation benefits. Breaking free from this false choice allows forests to serve as working landscapes that produce what rural communities need while building climate resilience all communities need. Myth. Planting trees is the best thing we can do for forest health. Tree planting matters, but protecting and restoring existing mature forests delivers exponentially more benefits. Consider carbon storage. At the Van Eck forests, carbon storage nearly quadrupled over 20 years through restoration to older forest conditions, all while maintaining timber harvest. Bacteria in old tree bark consume methane, a greenhouse gas 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Ecological forest management on the Van Eck now means the habitat supports more than 250 species that were lost when forests were intensively logged. Mature forests support complex systems and functions young forests cannot replicate. Myth. Forests are about trees, not water. Nearly half of the United States drinking water originates in forests' lands. Forests filter, regulate, and store water before it reaches reservoirs. When Gifford Pinchot founded the U.S. Forest Service in 1905, its foundational legislation cited securing favorable conditions of water flows as its central purpose. Water came first, not timber. Pinchot understood forests are water infrastructure. California's 11,000-acre Trinity Headwaters protects water supplies for millions of acres of farmland and cities as far south as San Diego. Yet policies still overwhelmingly favor dams and treatment plants over natural solutions. Another myth: fire is bad for forests. For millennia, forests evolved with frequent low-intensity fires that indigenous communities used to maintain soil fertility and forest health. Catastrophic megafires result from decades of fire suppression, not fire itself. Research shows working with good fire through thinning and prescribed burns can reduce catastrophic wildfire risk by up to 75%. Low-intensity fires, combined with proactive management, create resilient forests that protect communities. This Arbor Day, let's move past the myths holding us back and embrace what forests can actually deliver when we manage them for multiple benefits. Next, we have subsidies keep U.S. on top as long as we do not sabotage them. That $7,500 tax credit to buy an electrical vehicle, now gone, was a grotesque misallocation of federal spending. It was a form of rent seeking, whereby companies seek to dominate the bureaucracy instead of the marketplace. Thus wrote Kyle Smith in a Wall Street Journal column titled, "EVs Can't Compete Without Subsidies." Smith deserves the Pulitzer for clueless commentary, a competitive category. About 6 weeks earlier, President Trump launched a war on Iran paid for, subsidized by American taxpayers. Some of it was to obliterate Iran's nuclear program, a worthy goal. But it was also about oil, hence the ongoing struggle to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for tankers. Let's talk car makers and subsidies. In 1908, when Henry Ford's Model T first rolled out the assembly line, 93% of America's rural public roads lacked any kind of surfacing. And until decent roads could permit town-to-town car travel, the market for Ford's new product would be largely limited to well-to-do city folk seeking a new plaything. The fledgling car industry clearly needed good roads to prosper, and several industry leaders proposed pooling their resources to privately build some kind of national highway system. Not Henry Ford. Government should pay for it, he said, and Ford became a major force in the Good Roads to movement, which pushed for greater government involvement. It achieved ultimate victory with the Federal Highway Act of 1921. This was classic rent-seeking, to use Smith's dismissive term, that is, getting the government rather than the marketplace to advance an industry's interests. In 2023 alone, U.S. taxpayers spent about $285 billion building, maintaining, and policing roads. But rent-seeking can also lead to good results for the nation at large. The modern road system helped America prosper into the 20th century and beyond. And what do electric vehicle makers need from government? Not roads. The existing roads do just fine. They need something that costs considerably less than a network of interstates. Many would-be customers for EVs worry that they'd be on a long trip with nowhere to charge their vehicles. The Biden administration tried to address that concern by budgeting a mere $8 billion to build coast-to-coast systems of recharging stations along said interstates. Trump tried to kill it. He froze the charger station plan, mirroring much of it in litigation. He launched a smear campaign against EVs. Many mega devotees followed him in mocking them, and candidates campaigned against EVs as a hoax. Governmental sabotage and a drop in gasoline prices devastated U.S. efforts to adopt the technology the rest of the world was running toward. Ford stopped making its all-electric Ford F-150 Lightning last year. Consider this. The owner of an electric Tesla Model Y can drive 100 miles for less than $5. With pump prices of $4 a gallon, well, they're $6 in California, a comparable compact SUV, the 2025 Toyota RAV4, costs more than twice as much, $10.40, to go that distance, and it's a hybrid. Meanwhile, at today's gas prices, the driver of Ford's gas-powered F-150 may have to shell out $20 to travel the same 100 miles. And where is China in all this? Mostly watching as high gas prices strain the U.S. economy and not minding it one bit. For over a decade, China has devoted massive resources to reducing its need for imported oil, while becoming the world's biggest maker of EVs. With gas prices spiking, Americans are again looking at EVs, just as discouraged car makers had largely given up on them. We're losing. And what were EV subsidizing? They were subsidizing our economy, our national security, and our future. And next, let's have some hints from Heloise. Use baby monitor for emergencies. First submission is from Beverly Gibbs from Spokane, Washington. And she writes, Dear Heloise, caring for my elderly mother full-time brings surprises, and not all of them are good. One night she fell, and when I found her, she was too confused to press an emergency button, even if she had one. And it was a friend who pointed me toward baby monitors after our scare. Audio-only ones, which turned out to be exactly right. 2 sets cover the house well enough, and with the adjustable volume, we each get some privacy. But nothing goes by unheard. She doesn't have to press anything or remember to put something on. The sound carries on its own. Honestly, I hadn't expected it to settle my nerves the way it did. If you care for an aging parent at home, I highly recommend it. And next, we have a submission from M. Stewart from Muskegon, Michigan. Dear Heloise, even the smallest household items matter in family care, like straws. My mother has severe tremors, so flexible plastic straws are essential at home. For years, I tossed them out after just one use. One day, I realized how much waste I was creating. Now, after each use, I wash every straw in warm, soapy water, give it a good rinse, and set it upright in a cup to air dry. They hold up well for multiple uses, and cutting back on single-use plastic really adds up over time, and even a small habit like this does help. And next, we have medical complaints. Dear Heloise, many readers may not know where to go for concerns about a doctor or medical provider. The Better Business Bureau reviews certain healthcare complaints. You can reach them at bbb.org or call 1-800-552-0197 to find the office nearest you. For complaints about a doctor specifically, your state's medical licensing board is really where you want to go. They're the ones with actual authority over physicians. A quick search for your state's medical board complaint should pull up the right page. Be sure to keep records of dates, names, and any documents before you file. And that was submitted by Elena Reed. Next, tarnished flatware. Dear Heloise, years of dishwasher use dulled my flatware. Polishing each piece by hand just wasn't practical. A friend suggested lining a large baking dish with aluminum foil, the shiny side up, and placing the flatware in a single layer. She said to sprinkle baking soda over the pieces and pour in enough boiling water to cover them and let them soak for about 10 minutes. The reaction between the foil, baking soda, and hot water removes the tarnish from the metal. Rinse each piece well and dry right away with a soft cloth, since air drying can leave water spots. For stubborn gray residue in the ridges, a soft toothbrush dipped in the solution works well. The results really surprised me. My flatware looks years younger, and the process costs almost nothing. That was submitted by Karen S. in Orange County, California. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Next, under Spotlight, Jobs. Hiring here was better than all of U.S. in 2025. Something unusual happened last year. The Buffalo-Niagara region added jobs at a faster pace than the rest of the country. That bit of good news, buried in the revised employment data released earlier this month, pegged the region's annual job growth at 1.3%, far exceeding the 0.1% increase nationwide. It was the first time in the past 4 years that local job growth outpaced the nation. But the good news also came with some bad news. The revision by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics also slashed the region's 2024 job growth to a virtually stagnant 0.1%, far slower than first reported. The revisions took away any job growth in 2024, and they've amped it up in 2025, said Timothy Glass, the state labor department's regional economist in Buffalo. So it is really more a matter of when the hiring happened, as opposed to an overall pickup in job growth. But if that's the case, it could mean the region still has some positive momentum on the hiring front. The adjustments put more job growth in recent months, and that perhaps could indicate that there is a resilience in the labor market locally that may fuel at least small gains going forward, said Juliana Golubiski, a Canisius University economist. In fact, over the last 4 years, the region has lagged significantly behind the nation in job creations. And while the country has added jobs at a 5.8% pace since the beginning of 2022, the region's jobs base has grown by just 3.9%, continuing a long trend of hiring across Buffalo, Niagara, lagging behind the national pace. And now the cover story in Buffalo Next is entitled Creation of New Museum Yields Architectural Trove. The old stone church, with its peak and stained glass windows on Park Place in Niagara Falls, has stood the test of time for 97 years, a testament to its construction and congregants who worshiped there until recently. But it also suffered over time a victim of a 1973 blaze that severely damaged the church and its upper reaches and left burnt embers emblazoned in the wooden floor below. Unable to afford the repairs, leaders of the shrinking congregation opted instead to hide the soaring ceiling as well as a brick archway and dramatic 3-pane arched window behind drywall, cement, and a drop ceiling. That's the way Dr. Khurshid Guru and his team found it when they bought the vacant former First Church of Christ Scientist 6 years ago. This was a dump, Guru said. The ceiling was almost ready to fall in. It was really in bad shape. Only when they started interior demolition, knocking through the plaster, did they rediscover the hidden secrets of its architecture. Now those historic features have been revealed and restored, with the entire building at 650 Park Place opening up again, thanks to the $5 million renovation that will soon see the old church become the new home for a museum and a library dedicated to Kashmiri art and culture. And while it was more expensive than expected, Guru hopes it can be an inspiration for other owners of old buildings to restore their own properties. This can be encouragement for the whole city, that we cannot get rid of old buildings just because they look old, Guru said. We wanted, at the end of the day, for people to say, if they can do it, I can do it. Guru, a surgeon at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center, has been working with his wife, Dr. Lubna Guru, and several other supporters on a venture to create the nonprofit Center for Kashmir. They've amassed a personal collection of 1,500 books, paintings, prints, manuscripts, and other artifacts, which they've donated to the museum for display and research. Valued at about $2 million, it is potentially the largest collection outside the Kashmir itself, including the biggest assortment of books on the region aside from what might be in the British Museum or the Library of Congress, Guru previously said. The goal is to tout the diversity, history, and peaceful traditions of Central Asian regions that is also known as a constant source of tension and fighting between India and Pakistan. At the same time, the organizers hope to boost local tourism, drawing visitors not only from Buffalo Niagara region and a larger area within driving distance around it, but also from the hordes of tourists that flock to Niagara Falls every year, particularly from Asia. The Gurus identified the 12,000 square foot church as an ideal location because of its proximity to other attractions, such as the Aquarium of Niagara and the Niagara Gorge. A Guru hopes it can become part of a heritage corridor that would include the Castellani Art Museum in Lewiston, the Niagara Aerospace Museum, and the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. We are proud to have rescued this piece of Niagara Falls history, the nonprofit said in a statement. By marrying 100-year-old craftsmanship with modern technology, we have created a premier sanctuary for our unique collection and a new cultural anchor for the downtown community. And since buying the church in 2020, the nonprofit group has been steadily raising funds for what started as a $2 million project, while also undertaking several phases of renovation on the building, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But it's taken much longer than expected, and they're already 18 months behind schedule in their opening, which had been slated for September 2024. But also more significantly expensive than originally projected, not only because of post-pandemic inflation, but because of all the extra steps that the group decided to take once they realized what they had. We could have just put lipstick on a pig and covered it, but we said no. It would look terrible if we did that, Guru said. We need to do it once and do it well. So workers exposed and restored all of the original features, including the dramatic tall ceiling and open space, the brick archway between the main sanctuary area and a smaller front section, and the giant arched windows that had been hidden. The roof was repaired at a cost of $140,000, and small rooms and cubicles were demolished. A new main entrance was created on the Pine Avenue side of the building because that's where the new elevator could fit. The pine wood floor was retained and restored with dark embers burned into it. A new mezzanine level was built in the interior, creating 1,400 square feet of additional display space, and an upper balcony above the library at the Park Place entrance will become a scholar's research space, framed in glass so that museum patrons can observe the work while the scholar can see into the museum space. Art will even be displayed on the angled ceiling, lit up from across the room instead of close up. He has a certificate of occupancy, and Guru is targeting an opening by spring 2027. The nonprofit is interviewing 4 to 5 exhibition firms, including Haley Exhibits, before selecting one to curate the museum and decide how many items to display at one time. The museum's board has already raised more than $2.3 million in private donations from across the country, along with $1.23 million in state grants, but still needs another $1.1 million to $1.5 million to close the gap. Last month, county economic development officials agreed to more than double the funding they are granting the project after touring the building, seeing the work that Guru has done, and understanding why the cost has gone up so much. Exhibits are expensive. Designs are expensive, Guru said. Whatever we do with this building, we don't want to come back and spend more money. We have gotten everything done meticulously. Next, under retail, new stores coming to Galleria, and Tops will offer SNAP delivery. Walden Galleria is making room for several new stores that will open this year. First up is authentic Yemeni coffee maker Taiba Coffee, which will open roughly 1,150 square foot space behind P.F. Chang's across from Oakley. It will have an interior patio. Fragrance retailer Perfumania will open next month on the lower level near Starbucks in a 1,320 square foot boutique. It will offer an array of designer and exclusive fragrances. American Eagle is in the process of overhauling its roughly 8,000 square foot space. For the time being, it is operating out of a temporary space on the upper level across from J.C. Penney's. It will open at the end of May with a modern, elevated concept. Ruby Thai Kitchen will open in the food court in June, taking over the former Subway space across from Burger King, serving Thai cuisine. A new nail salon will open later this year called Perfection Nail Spa 8, located on the upper level outside of Macy's. The spacious salon will fill more than 4,000 square feet. Also outside Macy's on the upper level, jewelry concept Noble Jade Ring Bar will fill 2,000 square feet with a permanent lease. Later this year, beauty and wellness retailer La Nova will open on the upper level outside of J.C. Penney in a nearly 1,000 square foot space. And Gaiuzo Japanese Barbecue will take over the 9,000 square foot space vacated by Santora's Pizza Pub and Grill across from the Cheesecake Factory on an outer parcel between Texas de Brazil and Aloha Crab. It will offer a yakinuki dining experience where guests grill their own meat at their tables. The mall said the new offerings demonstrate Galleria's commitment to Western New York. We are incredibly excited about the depth and variety of new brands and concepts joining the shopping center this year, said Joel Caddy, general manager at Walden Galleria, in a statement. Next, we have Tops offers DoorDash for Snap users. Tops Market has partnered with third-party delivery app DoorDash to make delivery available to recipients of SNAP, also known as food stamps. Tops customers can now use SNAP/EBT benefits to purchase eligible groceries for delivery through DoorDash. Customers can use an alternate payment system in the DoorDash app to cover items that are not eligible for SNAP, as well as associated taxes, fees, and tips. Fresh grocery delivery has become more important, especially on the east side of Buffalo, as grocery options such as Bray Miller Market, Dollar General, and Rite Aid have closed their doors. At Tops, we're committed to taking care of our neighbors and strengthening the communities we serve, said Ron Ferry, president of Tops Market, in a statement. And by expanding access to online grocery delivery for SNAP customers, we're helping ensure more families can put fresh, healthy food on the table with greater ease and dignity. Also, a new golf simulator is coming to West Seneca. Bankshot, a golf simulator space in East Aurora, will open a second location in West Seneca this fall. Owned by Karner Development Group, the new Bankshot will be located at 5700 Seneca Street in the former Ryan's Grayside Grill and Flappy's Pub. Apartments are being developed for the second floor. The Bankshot on Seneca will expand on East Aurora's concept and feature 3 full-swing Pro 2.0 golf simulators, indoor billiards and darts, as well as a full bar and lounge. It will offer event hosting and have on-site food service and eventually add an outdoor mini putt-putt course. Final details are still being worked out, and the site is already under construction. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the April 19th, 2026 issue of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News. We read from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News every Sunday at 6 p.m. Your reader has been Susan, and thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the National Enquirer. At 8 p.m., we have People Magazine. And at 9 o'clock, we have the New York Times Book Review. Stay tuned for these readings and more. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please stay with us. If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes